Well, welcome everyone to our webinar on profiling biosecurity champions and projects. My name's Justin Belanger. I'm the knowledge broker for the Biosecurity Hub project for NRM Regions Australia. Can I just recognise that we're all joining from First Nations country across Australia. I'm in Canberra today on Ngunnawal country, which is fantastic. I'd just like to recognise the contribution our First Nations people have made through their custodianships of all the lands that we work, live and play on, both now, in the past, and those that are emerging as future custodians of our lands. And can I recognise and pay my respects to any First Nations people that are joining us today. Can I acknowledge Sergeant Trish for all of the work that they have done in terms of getting today's webinar up and going, which is fantastic. And thank you for the people who have joined us. A few little pieces of housekeeping, just to let you know that the session is being recorded and we will be using it to create some short videos that we will put through our YouTube channel for future use. Can you please mute yourselves when you are not talking? If you haven't done so already, can you indicate where you are from by renaming yourself in your handle? And you just need to use the three little dots on your screen and click on rename. And that just helps other people know where you are from. And lastly, please use the chat for questions. We have a Q&A session at the end of all of the presentations, and so we'll run through all the questions there. Thanks for that. So look, today's topic on profiling biosecurity champions and projects was a priority that was identified by the NRM sector in our really early consultations for the National Biosecurity Hub. So we're really pleased to be able to provide it to you today. It's very much an information sharing session with a lot of peer-to-peer information and technical data to help all NRM practitioners guide and inform the way that they work. It's something that we would like to repeat in the future. So if this is of relevance to you, then that would be great to hear from that when we do the surveys at the end of the day. So we have a great lineup of 6 presenters and topics that can cover a whole range of species and geographical areas. So I'm going to introduce each one of them as we go. So our first presenter is Dennis Gannaway from Healthy Land and Water in South East Queensland, who's going to talk to us about arming our field staff to combat fire ants. And this will really cover off the NRM Field Office's response to fire ant incursions on work sites and how Southeast Queensland, how they went about the control actions in Southeast Queensland. So, Dennis, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll share my screen. Great. So everybody's seeing the page clearly?
Yes, that's great.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for the opportunity. So here in Southeast Queensland, we're dealing with red imported fire ants, and specifically what we're going to look at today is the impact that they're having on our project sites. So a little bit of background about this critter. That's in there. What's a fire ant? The bit of fire ant is from when they bite you, because it literally feels like that bite is on fire. Lovely little creature, swarms its enemy. Comes in a variety of sizes with it, and on this area here is their nest. Very distinctive mound. It just looks like a mound of sand or mulch with no entry holes apparent on the mound itself, which is kind of its identifier. Very easily identified if you stick your finger into that, because they'll swarm up and bite, and that's kind of their method of attack. So that's the creature, pretty small. So what's the problem? Well, the first problem that we have, and whoever's dealt with the sort of invasive ants, is the health impacts. It hurts. It hurts like hell. Leaves these pustules if you get attacked by them, and that results in things like anaphylaxis and those other types of reactions. But more broadly than that is its environmental impact, much like the crazies or the yellow ants, etc. The main impact that this will be the displacement of native ant species. They're also voracious. They will attack everything and anything that crawls past them, swarming, stinging it, and taking it back. Just as an example, that is a turtle hatchling that has been inundated by the ants. They have very, very real economic impacts, threat to agriculture, particularly around that cost of production and outputs, the restriction and care that's needed. But within Southeast Queensland, the greatest threat that is posed is probably that social and lifestyle impacts. Texas and those areas where fire ants have really got away, we've seen reports of school fields being shut down and parks being shut down for use simply because of the presence of this ant around. So they bite, they kill everything, and they're prodigious hunters and swarmers. So this is the interesting bit. This is where they occur at the moment. So the first incursions were at the Port of Brisbane. They were seen came in 20 odd years ago, probably on a container, soil stuck to a container, and over that time they've been subject to an eradication program. Millions and millions of dollars have been spent to date. Within anybody who kind of knows Southeast Queensland, Brisbane down here, Gold Coast down here, there's two really significant areas or biosecurity areas that the eradication team are focusing on. This biosecurity zone 2 essentially is where they've got very well established nests, and it's very much a monitor, maintain and react. And biosecurity 1 was an area that was deemed to be clear of ants up to a couple of years ago, was the focus of absolute eradication. That's changed slightly these days, where the eradication effort, if you will, is concentrating very much on the boundary of these biosecurity zones 1 and 2, where the attempt is to eradicate everything and push the incursion back towards Brisbane and ultimately eradicate everything from a smaller and smaller area as we get back towards Brisbane. There's some obvious outliers. This is that army base outside of Toowoomba where they were found. And you would have heard reports of an incursion in northern New South Wales down here near Mullumbimby, at least Marulanbar, which was the movement of turf. Now, this is obviously the eradication, from the eradication point of view, this has meant that there's now a complete ban between the movement of turf and soils between Queensland and northern New South Wales in an attempt to stop that. For us as an NRM, our biggest concern is these numbers here, where we're seeing 4,500 and 6,100. That's the amount of nests that have been reported over the last 12 months. These two very high concentrations of areas correspond where we've had a lot of new housing development. There's a lot of soil being moved around. They also are our peri-urban and agricultural areas where a lot of our work, like stream restoration, tree planting, etc., occur. And this is where the ant has a very clear and impact on the work that our guys do out in the field. So the eradication process, at least, the program is still run federally out of the Queensland Department of Primary Industries. And And up until a couple of years ago, all management of all nests was under the control of the eradication program. A couple of years ago, that changed, where landholders are now able to treat their own nests on their ground. In fact, they have to under the Biosecurity Act, and local governments have now assumed a role in making sure that the treatment is done on their land. And this came about from the availability of granular poisons, which can be bought at Bunnings or anywhere else, and these are freely supplied out to landholders, particularly in this biosecurity 1 zone. You phone them up, they'll send you out the granular poisons, and you can treat the nests themselves. The broad-scale poisoning from helicopters and those type of things is still done by the eradication guys, and any other injection of chemicals, etc., needs to be done by a subcontractor. So who's responsible for what? The eradication is by the Fire Ant eradication team, and the managing of the nests falls under what is the General Biosecurity Obligation Act 2014 here in Queensland, which is essentially the obligation to anybody, landholder or land manager like an NRM, is the prevention of the spread of fire ants. So you're obligated that you will not enable that spread of the fire ant, and that's really what drives the need for us to respond. From a purely NRM situation, and from our officers on the ground, there's two concerns that impact us as an NRM group. Obviously, the first one is the safety of our officers. The WH issue, because the ants bite, we have had officers that have had to be treated for ant bites, so that's concern number one. And that also obviously extends to all of our subcontractors and volunteers and anybody else that's on their property. And the second one is that biosecurity obligation. We as an NRM group are very, very aware that, you know, we can't be a catalyst for spreading these things through when we're moving mulch or sand or soil or anything of that nature around the place. So those are the two issues that really impact us as an NRM group. Our first response, you know, one of the biggest responses was the qualifications and things that are needed for the distribution of poison, of the treating of nests and that type of things. As everybody knows, utilizing any sort of chemicals, etc., for the killing of weeds or animals, etc., is usually under a very strict permitting regime. For us, it was quite liberating to find out that we simply had to do a course which was available from the Fire Ant organizations. They have a very, very comprehensive website here. I encourage everybody to go have a look at that one. The result is that we can very quickly put a lot of our staff through training, and this training gives them access to identification, gives them an understanding of the chemicals that can and can't be used for us to treat these. And at the end of that, they do get a nice certificate saying that, you know, you're not qualified, but at least you completed the Fire Ant training course. And it eliminates this need for the very high-end qualifications in Queensland. That's you know, the pest management technicians, which allows for that use of injectors or some of the more harsher chemicals. What this certification does do is it gives us confidence that when we are handing out granular poisons to all of our officers, and every one of our field vehicles now has a 1 kilo bucket of granular poison and fire ant poison, courtesy of the fire ant eradication staff, we are confident that they are quite safely using and applying that poison, and we're not going to do harm outside of our target, which is that fire ant. And it's a very simple process of getting a cap full of this granule, sprinkling it over the fire ant nest, and watching that nest disappear in about 3 days to about a week. Generally, that nest is gone. There obviously is the discussion, does it impact other ants, etc.? And the answer is yes, it does. But a targeted approach then really reduces that risk quite substantially.
Dennis, we just need to move through a bit more quickly for the next couple of
slides. Not a problem, getting there. The other part is that we need to be very, very clear with our landholders that the NRM group is not the group that is going to treat all of the fire ants on their property. So this is the black highlighted area is our access agreement, which says that, you know, if we find a nest, we're obligated to report that you have fire ants, but we're only going to look at those nests that are within the project site, not beyond that. We're not wanting to set ourselves up as fire ant management across broad scale. So what do we do? Well, if we know there's an infestation, how many nests are there? Few nests allows us to do some very clear work and understanding of, well, we're just going to go and sprinkle some poison on and it should do it. But if we're finding more and more nests on the ground, we got to take some serious considerations of what the impact of that is going to be on our project costs, particularly for external funders. And we may have to take a very difficult decision as to whether it's feasible to undertake that project at all if it's going to blow our budget out too far. Similarly, what happens when we find a nest during work, so we stumble across it? Real takeaway of this is we have to then stop work immediately and undertake an investigation to ascertain how that nest got there. Was it there and we just didn't see it, or did we bring it in on soil, etc., and take remediation action from that? And again, that has a huge implication on the delivery from a budgetary point of view. That's it. Thank you very much. Very happy to take any questions.
Thanks.
Coming up.
We'll run those through to the end session so we can do all the Q&A in one lot. So, but thank you very much for your presentation. We will move on now, go across the country to Jarna Kendle from York NRM, and she's going to talk to us about Carna'bee hollow management for Carnaby's cockatoos and how we can protect a limited resource. So, Jarna, if you're able to share your screen, we'll hand over to you. Thank you. And you're on mute just in case. Pick that one up.
Is my screen sharing?
We can't see it just yet. That is coming up now. Perfect. If you just want to go on to the slideshow mode.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, skipped ahead. Sorry, my notes have skipped ahead. Has yours skipped ahead as well?
We're on the welcome screen with your title. No, so we're good.
That's right. I have them printed, so I'll read this and then go to my notes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jarna Kendle and I'm the Biodiversity Program Coordinator for York NRM in the Northern Agricultural region of Western Australia. My short presentation today is focused on our National Heritage Trust funded project called Protecting WA's Black Cockatoos. Carnabees are a much loved and iconic West Australian species, and if you visit our capital city, Perth, you're likely to hear the distinct call or even spot them flying overhead to one of their favourite roost sites. In the Northern Ag region where I work, Carnabees rely on more than one endangered ecosystem during their annual migration. This is the foraging grounds located on the Swan Coastal Plain and their breeding sites in the eucalypt woodlands of the WA wheat belt. For those of you unfamiliar with Carnabees, they're a large, long-lived, charismatic black cockatoo endemic to the southwest of WA. Carnabees are monogamous and form a lifelong bond with their chosen partner. Carnabees are sexually dimorphic, and in this photo you can see the male has a red eye ring and a dark bill, whereas the female has a bright white cheek patch and a light grey bill. Their main food source is the seeds of Banksia, Hakea, Eucalyptus and Grevillea, but they've also learnt to eat introduced foods like canola, pine cones, double Gs and pig melons. Carnabees exhibit maternal breeding site fidelity, meaning that they like to return to the same patch of woodland each year to breed. If Carnabees successfully raise their nestling in a hollow, they like to keep it each year, but if the chick fails, they'll blame the hollow rather than their parenting skills and look for a new one. So for successful proliferation of this species, good hollows are critical and the site must have food and water within a 6-kilometre radius. The wheat belt where Carnabees breed is considered one of the most modified bioregions in Australia and is roughly 85% cleared of native vegetation, with some shires even up to 95% cleared. This means that hollows the right size, shape and location are hard to come by. Carnabees are in a housing crisis. As a double hit, they are also in the midst of a building timeframe crisis. A natural hollow the right size and shape can take more than 130 years to build. Unfortunately, this lack of hollows means competition is a serious threat for Carnabees. Carnabees are pretty placid and don't tend to squabble over a hollow. So more aggressive species like corellas or galahs will snap up any prime real estate without much fuss. Another major threat that came to light last breeding season is the predation of breeding age birds by feral cats at Camello Creek. Camello is the longest monitored breeding site for Carnabees, and researchers recorded 6 adult Carnabees and 11 nestlings and eggs predated on by feral cats. From this site, and more broadly, the loss of breeding age birds is a real concern due to their slow reproduction rate and mature breeding age of 4 years. Compounded by predation and competition, habitat loss is a single major concern for Carnabees, and this is why we tend to focus on managing these limited assets. Some of the management activities we have undertaken include the installation of artificial hollows, and these have been fantastic. The Carnabees love them, and the competitor species are less inclined to use them. We also have evidence that Carnabees are choosing them over natural hollows. But artificial hollows are not a set and forget solution, and if they aren't kept in good working order, they can become a liability and can even cause accidental deaths. Annual inspections help us keep them up to code with the odd renovation required every couple of years. Another approach that we've found to be very worthwhile is restoring natural hollows back to good working order, and these modern redevelopments are usually snapped up by Carnaby families as quick as they become available. This evidence strongly suggests that hollow availability is limiting the ability of Carnabees to reproduce. This is why we're focusing on habitat management. For this new Carnaby project and the biosecurity aspect of my presentation, we are attempting to identify and control feral bees and hollows. During our previous breeding surveys, we have noticed a large number of feral bees using tree hollows at all of our monitored breeding sites. To identify the hollows impacted by feral bees, we're using the Ecological Monitoring System Australia's Fauna Ground Count protocol. So far, we have targeted 3 of our known breeding sites, and all 3 have had feral bees recorded in hollows. We're still learning to use EMSA, so I don't have the hive location data here for you today. Another key approach for our project is to engage First Nations people wherever we can. With the feral bee control, we are working with Sam, who is a Yamaji man and a licensed pest management technician. Sam has recently been endorsed by the Yamaji Southern Regional Corporation as one of their recommended Aboriginal businesses, and we are assisting him to build his professional network and capacity within our region. We currently add biosecurity into our projects where we can, but like all environmental activities, there is room for improvement. Biosecurity can always be better resourced, offer more science-based options for end users, and provide better community engagement. NAC recognises that we play an important role in the delivery of biosecurity, as do the stakeholders here today, who are all part of the broader network that can advocate for and achieve protection and restoration for Australia's incredible environmental assets. Thanks for listening, and any questions?
Thanks, Jarna. That's fantastic. An amazing piece of work on some critically threatened species. We'll run the questions down to the end of the presentation, but in our tick-tacking across the country, we're going to go back to Queensland. And this time we're going to help hear from Dr. Manuela Fischer from Cape York NRM in far north Queensland. And she's going to present on their award-winning project on Western Cape York Ranges protecting marine turtles. So, Manny, great to have you here, and over to you.
Thank you, Justin, and thanks for having me. I'm just going to share my screen. Is that coming up for everyone?
That's
great.
Fantastic.
Okay. That's right. So I'm talking about a project on the Cape York region with a title of Collaboration Great Results, Western Cape York Ranges Protecting Marine Turtles. So in Australia, there is 6 species of marine turtle represented. There's only 7 across the world. And in the Cape York region, there's 4 species. We have the flatback turtle, the olive ridley turtle, the hawksbill, and the green turtle. And some of them are endangered or critically endangered. There's a couple of threats that these turtles face, especially in the Cape York region. So we often get like fishery bycatch. There's a huge impact of climate change with the increasing temperature, and a lot of marine debris have been found on these beaches. That picture that you can see there is actually taken on one of the Western Cape York regions by me. And the main cause that I'm talking about today is the nest predation. So a huge threat to marine turtle nests is that they get dug up by predators. So especially feral pigs are causing one of the main threats for digging up nests. So as you can see in this map, across Australia, the distribution of feral pigs is actually the largest in the Cape York region. So it's really a huge impact on the environment. So nests are dug up not only by feral pigs, they are also taken by humans, like Aboriginal people, for ceremonial reasons, and other predators such as dingoes and goannas. The predation rates of turtle nests used to be more than 70%, up to 100% of some of these beaches. The nests are dug up, you can see in that middle picture, they're dug up by the pigs or other predators and completely destroyed, so there's absolutely no survival rate. Historically, there has been a fair bit of effort put in stopping this threat, so there has been a fair bit of like feral pig management and other management actions taken place, and officially the Western Cape Turtle Threat Abatement Alliance was formed in 2013, which is also referred to WCTTAA. So who is WCTTAA? WCTTAA, like I just said, the Western Cape Turtle Threat Abatement Alliance, was established in May 2013 and is a partnership of 6 Indigenous land and sea owners and managers. You can see we're ranging from like the Komanyama region in the south up to Pombora, Arakoon, Napanum, Mapoon, and Bamaga. They work together on 8 beaches and 1 island, which is Crab Island, all the way up near Bamaga on the tip of Cape York. The vision of WCTTAA is to officially manage threats to coastal habitats and enhance the opportunities for nesting marine turtle populations on the Western Cape York Peninsula. On top of the land and sea rangers and managers, there's also a very, very large group of stakeholders involved. We are funded through the Australian and the Queensland government, and we contract our deliverable out to the Aboriginal shires, which then goes back into the WCTTAA program. And the program itself is coordinated by Cape York NRM, which is me. So I'm the WCTTAA coordinator sitting back in the office and then making sure everything is working together. So this alliance and the setup of the alliance with being completely Indigenous led and having such a huge impact on the environment is actually quite unique across the globe. So the coordinator, like I said, myself, Cape York NRM. Cape York NRM is mainly actually working across the whole of the Cape York region, not just the Western Cape. And our vision is to a healthy landscape, healthy community, and healthy economy for Cape York Peninsula. And it's important to us and our responsibility to address biosecurity issues in such a unique and also very, very, very isolated region of Australia. So I quickly touched on the predator management. So the Vactor these days builds themselves these purpose-built aluminium cages that we use to protect these nests by putting them over the nest chamber to stop the predators to get into the nest and dig up the soil, or the sand in this case. There's also a little bit of on-ground feral animal control happening, but our main impact is actually arrow pig culls that are made out from the air, and we produce 2 culls per year per ranger group. So we have 6 ranger groups, and which means up to 12 culls a year over a couple of days. This brings our predation rates, which used to be over 70% to date, down to less than 30%, which is below the sustainable clutch loss of turtles. You can see in this figure the impact. So like I said, Vactor was formed in 2013. So the first data kind of came in 2015, where the predation rates were very, very high. And this example, the flatback turtle, so by now, 2024, the predation rate is below the limit, which is the red line for most of these regions. And this is just a quick idea of how many pigs are shot per year. So we have an aerial pig control of up to like 4,000 pigs per year. This is only the aerial pig control, so there's no on ground in this figure. And it doesn't even include all the ranger groups involved. So up to date, there is actually more ranger groups, more area covered. So the whole of Western Cape around Arrow-Croon and Beeper, that's also covered these days, which is not represented in this figure. But the numbers are huge. They were much bigger, obviously, when the pig impact of pigs was larger. But now that they're shot every year, the numbers are going down. So how do we know if this is actually successful? So the rangers go out every year during the peak nesting season and monitor these nests. They patrol the beaches, they camp out there sometimes for 4 weeks at a time, rotate through and do beach patrols to look at the predation impact of the pigs and other predators on the nests. So this is an idea of how we get the results back, whether our efforts are actually working. And they do this ongoing monitoring every year, and they also look at hatching success every year. To do this, we use an app that's just been rolled out 2 years ago, and all ranger groups are using the same app. So all the data coming back to me is actually very, very consistent across the whole of the Western Cape York region, which is also quite unique. So this effort has been recognized first by the National Feral Pig Management Plan. They have decided that Vactor and the Cape York efforts is one of the 6 demonstration sites for the National Feral Pig Management Plan, where we represent our efforts compared to other areas in Australia and showcase how successful it is and how we measure our impact, because a lot of people do pig control but don't actually measure the impact. And last year, we were fortunate enough to receive the First Nations Award for Excellence in Biosecurity by the Department of Agriculture, Fishery and Forestry. So it recognized groups and organizations to have shown outstanding contribution to their normal activities to support and promote Australians' biosecurity. So we were flown down to Canberra to receive this reward by the Minister in the Parliament House, and it was a really, really good way to showcase the impact of First Nations people on our biosecurity. Thank you. Any questions? I'm happy to get back to you at the end of.
Yeah, thanks, Manny. That's fantastic. And congratulations again on the award and the achievements of the project. That's amazing. Just a reminder, if people do have questions, they can drop them in the chat and we will run through them at the end of the presentation. We will now shift from animal pests over to weeds, and Troy Bowman from the Alanjara Woollahra Landscapes Board in South Australia is going to present to us on the collaborative efforts of buffel grass management in South Australia. So thanks, Troy. If you're online, if you can share your presentation, we'll get you to run through that.
That's great. Thank you, Justin. If you can just confirm that you can see my screen there when it pops up.
Can confirm.
Excellent. All right. So yeah, buffel grass management in South Australia. So I'm currently the state buffel grass coordinator, and ultimately, buffelgrass, as many of you will well know, is a deep-rooted C4 summer-growing grass introduced since the 1920s, primarily for pasture improvement and dust control, and it's now widely spread across many of the arid and semi-arid sort of landscapes across Australia, and causing significant impacts on safety through primarily the impact of fire. And risk to infrastructure, as well as culture and the environment. Buffle's been declared in South Australia since 2015, so we're currently in our second iteration of a strategic plan, and it's declared for the sale and movement of either plant material or contaminated goods, as well as having a requirement for destruction or control on property. We manage it in South Australia based on a zoning approach, ultimately around the density and distribution and resulting feasibility of control. So we have a Zone 1 up in the northwestern corner of the state where it's ultimately asset protection. Zone 2, where it's about protecting sites and where possible reducing those populations, particularly outliers and high-risk vectors. And then Zone 3, for the remainder of the state where it's an eradication target. And since 2015, we've undertaken a huge amount of activity. We've conducted over 15,000 kilometres of roadside surveys. We've done strategic response activities where we pull together landscape staff from across the state and target to establish containment lines and priority infestations. But the focus of today's talk is around current activities, which is part of our current Landscape Priority Fund project. And ultimately, the goal of that is to achieve a truly multi-agency coordinated approach to buffelgrass management across the state. And priority activities within the project include targeted both surveillance and control, investment in research looking at improving the control tools that we currently have. So looking at what's going on in soil microbiomes and can that be manipulated to improve our control efforts. Australia-wide genetic population analysis to inform if and when it's approved as a target for biocontrol, to be able to look at host range surveys for potential agents, as well as improving our surveillance effectiveness through some use of drone and AI surveillance. In addition to looking at some benefit cost analysis, climate prediction modelling, and ongoing sort of herbicide trials to combat resistance, as well as improve the current tools that we have. Also sort of working with Biosecurity Commons to be able to aid in terms of resource allocation and a variety of workflows looking at potential spread and risk and those sorts of things. Education is a key part of any campaign, and so deliver a number of sort of workshops on best practice and how to develop plans and just making general awareness and the need for action on buffel at the forefront. Although it's a state sort of coordinator role, have been working quite significantly, particularly with Northern Territory, with their recent declaration of buffel, but as well as other states, and working as part of the NEWP, the National Established Weed Priority Framework, to assist with things like the WANS criteria. And just a note there, if anyone is able and happy to collect some DNA samples as part of that genetic population analysis, or be involved more broadly, I'd encourage you to sort of reach out and would welcome any support. So the governance structure of our current sort of program really sits sort of at the state level. We've got a steering committee, and with representatives from all of the landscape regions, which are equivalent to NRM regions, as well as Department of Primary Industries, Department of Infrastructure and Transport, Energy and Mines, and Environment and Water. And so ultimately we've got representation from those sort of key stakeholders there. and a couple of other sort of committees and working groups looking at the sort of operational level as well, to bring in practitioners and be able to share learnings and to be able to collaborate on projects and assist each other where possible there. And we also have a national sort of task force, a group that we call the Buffalo Legends, who consists of sort of researchers, practitioners, and a range of other and key sort of stakeholders that work together at that sort of national level. Other components of the project obviously relate to the strategic plan itself, regional surveillance and control programs, WANS and WINS nominations, as well as the research components and trials. Recently, we had a opportunity to provide a nomination for buffel grass as a weed of national significance, and we, as part of that sort of national collaboration, had a partnership between the Indigenous Desert Alliance, Arid Lands Environment Centre, and Alanjara Wirrara Landscape Board to pull together a comprehensive WANS nomination, which we've received some really great feedback on, and is going through the assessment process as we speak. But a testament to the collaboration, we had 87 organisations signed on to an open letter which we produced, and 43 letters of support from every mainland state and territory, and a significant number of sort of case studies looking at obviously management, impacts on culture, threatened species, fire, carbon, the pastoral industry, as well as health impacts. So a really broad collaboration for that nomination. We've been advocating quite strongly for some time at the state level, and met with the Deputy Premier, Minister Close, late last year, and that resulted in a ministerial roundtable back in November. And we had a number of ministers looking at environment and water portfolios, infrastructure and transport, energy and mining, primary industries, local government, and housing and urban development, as well as senior executives from landscape boards and a range of agencies, including the Pastoral Industry and Nature Alliance, CFS, Outback Communities Authority. So I guess a first really for particularly a weed, but a particular issue to have all of those high-level decision makers focused. And that roundtable consisted of a 2-hour sort of meeting, where we outline all of the relevant impacts of buffel grass, economic, social, and cultural, as well as in detail description of some PhD work looking at the ecological destructiveness of buffel, primarily through the impact of increased frequency and intensity of fire. And presentations from a range of other sort of key stakeholder agencies. After which the ministers left the meeting, and we sat down to workshop potential changes to policy, what sort of multi-agency partnerships opportunities are there, and the need for operational activities and funding. So a total of 37 attendees from across sectors, so unprecedented level of support there. As a result, we've done a range of sort of media and those sorts of things, again, to sort of raise the profile of buffel grass here in South Australia, and also develop some extension materials that really just sort of capture the severity and the breadth of the impacts of buffel grass visually, and as well as identifying potential opportunities and solutions into the future, and our vision and pathway forward. So following the ministerial roundtable and in recognition of the significant sort of safety, infrastructure, cultural and environmental impacts associated with buffel, the minister requested the development of a business case to support that coordinated statewide multi-agency approach. And we're utilising the sort of investment logic mapping approach that's in the process of being developed now, identifying the problem, the benefits, the proposed solutions framework or response. And other agencies have also offered to support in the development of that. But the real focus of the business case is a framework over the next 7 years, looking at reviewing our strategic plan, provision of a coordinator and an extension officer, regulatory and policy changes, compliance work, targeted action and research and data management, some of the core, I guess, components of a truly sort of statewide coordinated response. And really the focus, the problems that we're looking to target there is the scale of invasiveness and invasiveness of infestation. So looking at improved backstress control and landscape scale surveillance and control options. Looking at dealing with the frequency and the intensity of fires threatening safety and infrastructure, as well as culture and biodiversity. So those are really the main focus of that investment logic framework. So I guess where to from here? Really, it's about awaiting the outcome of the WANS nomination. I didn't mention, but we've also submitted a nomination for bufflegrass to be recognised as a standalone key threatening process. So those national frameworks certainly have the ability to provide national coordination and recognition that will definitely improve, particularly cross-border management of some of those sort of vectors and pathways. Delivery of priority research, which all of which will contribute to ultimately improve best practice management of bufflegrass. And as well as obviously conducting targeted surveillance and control within our state, and really ramping up the engagement of primary producers, local councils, and a range of other key stakeholders. One of the messages that did come out of the round table is following our presentations, the lack of understanding of the severity and the urgency required for managing those significant impacts. And the rollout of the Landscape Priority Fund is continuing. That although that is a short-term funding through the landscape regions, and so we've made the message and the call out loud and clear to the state that we need long-term, consistent, significant funding to really make inroads in managing bufflegrass and the associated risks at the state level. So the final step, where to from here, is cross our fingers and toes and hope that we can get that funding bid up through the Minister's office. We're looking at quite a significant amount of funding, of about $15 odd million over that 7-year period. So dramatic sort of boost to our capacity to effectively manage bufflegrass.
Thanks, Troy.
I'm aware that questions we'll deal with later. So thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you very much, Troy, and yeah, all the best of your pending nominations and applications. We're going to stick on weeds and now move back to North Queensland. And Andrew Dennis from Terrain NRM in North Queensland is going to explain to us how they're using satellite imagery to detect and map noxious weeds for treatment. Andrew, over to you. We can see your slide.
Thanks, Justin. This is what I'm going to describe to you today as part of an NHT-funded program, which is more than just working on these weeds. It's looking at a few other threatened species. But today we're just going to talk about one component of that project. And the reason for managing this particular weed, which is the wild tobacco bush, not the wild tobacco weed, it's different plants, is because it has a significant impact on one of our most threatened animals, spectacled flying fox. It's in DEQ's top priority threatened species. It's an important seed disperser and pollinator associated with tropical rainforests. It also forages and has ecological impacts in the nearby eucalypt forests just outside tropical rainforest boundaries. It is endangered throughout its entire global distribution, so around New Guinea and eastern Indonesia as well. But in Australia, it's undergone a more than 80% decline over the last 50 years, measured in this graph by CSIRO. Prior to 2004, in the late 90s, there were actually 850,000 bats counted or estimated. So that's a massive decline. In 2019, there were only 54,000 left after 23,000 died in a heat wave. So the second biggest mortality factor is an association between their foraging on the wild tobacco bush and coming in contact with a paralysis tick. They're not a natural host for the paralysis tick, so they have absolutely no immunity. Most of our native animals do, but the flying foxes would not normally forage down low where the ticks reside. We've done a whole lot of measures to determine that about 0.4% of feeding bouts of a bat on a tobacco bush would result in a bat getting a tick. The tick season, where the adults are questing, looking for hosts, is about 90 days at the end of the year. And in a camp last year near Yungaburra, there were more than 14,000 bats. So we would estimate that about 5,000 bats would pick up ticks off these bushes if every bat fed on tobacco bush every night. The reality was that 1,152 bats died in the tick season last year, which suggests that some might be dying away from the camp where we don't find them, and not every bat is eating tobacco fruit every night. The foraging on tobacco fruit coincides with the breeding season. So on the left, you can see the results of the adult bats getting tick paralysis, but there's also now more than 300 orphan babies in care, hopefully to be released later this year. Later this month. So, big problem, lots of bats dying. It's a problem that's restricted to the Atherton tablelands where this weed is particularly abundant. It's actually where the weed was first introduced, and it was introduced to attract fruit bats away from tropical fruit orchards. It's worked, though the bats still go to the fruit orchards as well. So we wanted to map and control the tobacco bush to break this association over 1,000 square kilometres of the Atherton tablelands. The most cost-effective way of doing that mapping was with high-resolution satellite imagery, given the area we were trying to map in detail. So we used some ground-truthed tobacco bushes to develop a model that used the spectral data from satellite imagery to classify the vegetation types using a spectral angle mapper. So we developed 13 classes of vegetation that were mapped, and one of those classes matches the reflectance of wild tobacco bush. So if we look at that image on the left, the bush itself has quite large leaves and they're very hairy. So in the central images, you can see these grey signatures in the aerial photograph. Those are wild tobacco bushes. They're reasonably distinct in the landscape. The images on the right show the different vegetation classes that our model developed. And the red was the one that reflected the wild tobacco bush. And the other shades of green and yellow are other vegetation types. In the lower right image, you can see sometimes other things have the same reflectance as tobacco bush. So there's a highway running along there, which is obviously not a tobacco bush, but it's in that same spectral range. So it's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty good. What we did then was, rather than putting all of those vegetation classes into our GIS system, we just took the wild tobacco class of spectral data and put that into the GIS system, and we've changed it to yellow instead of red. And it identifies on the landscape where high density patches of tobacco bush are, and it's helped us to develop a weed management plan. If we just focus in a little on this linear feature in the landscape there, You can see the image at the top on the right. The little yellow squiggles are polygons suggesting there might be wild tobacco there. And the image below that is the Queensland Globe fairly high resolution aerial photography. And you can see the silvery crowns of all the tobacco bush along that linear feature, which is what the model predicted. You can also see the model predicted stuff out in the paddock here. Some of that is wild tobacco bush. Some of that is old mature guinea grass. So it's about 80% accurate. We do get some false positives, and that means it requires a bit of ground truthing. So we identify where in the landscape is a priority to go and control based on our mapping. We might also add some other layers, such as where the bat camps are, where the foraging zones of the bats are, and then go and drive around and check whether the model is accurate. And we can actually, on our mapping portal, delete the false positives from the layer. And then we use that to work with our partners, such as the Tablelands Regional Council, who are going out killing the weed for us. And we help work planning and identifying where are the priority places to start to protect the bats. They've added this species as a significant species in their biosecurity plan, which was an important step. They have direct access to our mapping portal because they also have a GIS license, and they're able to record the data of where they've been to control the plants, how many stems they've killed, straight into our mapping portal and give the data straight to us. And they can go on all land tenures to do that. Because the plant is in their biosecurity plan, we now have a partnership with Main Roads as well. So Main Roads are funding the TRC to do the same work on the state roads, and we're funding them to do the private land and the council roads. We're in a process of developing a partnership with all of the traditional owners whose land we're working on. We're developing a model where they have employees from each mob on a team where the regional council provides the equipment and the training and the supervision to have a team go around the 1,000 square kilometres and kill all the weeds. And that program will continue until mid-2028. And alongside it, we'll be monitoring tick mortality in the camps to see if we're having an impact. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Andrew. That's fantastic. And our last presentation for today, we will keep on weeds, but we're going to switch from primarily environmental biosecurity to mostly agricultural biosecurity. So Salman Kudus from Western Local Land Services, New South Wales, is going to present on the blueprints for success about crafting impactful extension events to drive agricultural innovation. So Salman, I'll hand over to you. If you can show your slides, I'll confirm that we can see them. If you just go into presenter mode, that's perfect. Over to you.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me. Hi all, this is Salman Kudus. I work as a senior land services officer with Western Local Land Services. So basically, I will try to explore the outline of the blueprint for conducting a successful extension event in agriculture research, development, and biosecurity. I'm not an extension guru, but we will explore this topic and learn from my experience, as most of my career I worked as an agriculture scientist instead of extension provider. So this is a world cloud map for an event that shows that collaboration, stakeholders, partnership between organizations and institute are the main pillars, and we will explore these pillars as we go along. The most important for the extension events are the knowledge exchange and the community engagement. Events can facilitate the transfer of new technology, best technology available at the market, best practices, and research finding to the farmers and the landholders. For the community engagement, these events can create a platform for the landholders to connect, share experiences, and build network. So the main areas to look to deliver a successful event, there is a critical role of thorough planning and preparation to ensure success of an extension event, engaging a diverse stakeholders such as industry bodies, farmers, industry experts, and local authorities in the event planning process. Event should be effectively disseminate uh, and promote to adoption of new technologies and practices and aim to build a capacity building and knowledge sharing for the landholders, agriculture practitioners, enable them to improve their farming operations. Use the platform to foster collaboration and knowledge sharing among the various landholders, contribute in the long-term sustainability development of the respective sector. So what are the key elements to deliver an extension event? Clearly define the objective of the event, understand the audience. It can vary with the age or the knowledge of the audience, whether the audience is from the farming community, whether the audience is from the nature resource management area, or whether the audience is backyard gardeners or the hobby farmers sort of thing. So relevant and engaging content is very important, and the most important is the skillful facilitator who actually engage with the audience in a greater depth. Hands-on activities increase the interest in the event. Effective promotion, location, and timing of the event is very important. Collaborate with the key stakeholders, plan logistic details, conduct pre and post follow-up event, and measure the success at the end is very important to deliver a successful event. For the key consideration for effective planning, identify the specific needs and interests of the target audience, set a clear and measurable goal for the event, and format and timing is very important to align with the target audience for the event objectives. For the stakeholder engagement, the relevant topic is very important. Encourage the participant to do the question answer sessions, hands-on training, hands-on activities, field visits, uh, providing the resources, handouts, brochures are the area where people take a lot of interest, and that's are the tools which make more information readily available for the people. In terms of incorporating hands-on demonstration, uh, field demonstration is very encouraging for the peoples to see new things, interactive workshops, uh, specific skills such as application of different things or management of different pests and diseases are the where the peoples are very interested to see how the things actually looks in the field. In addition, if you are running a group from a specific community like from the landholders, then one of the landholders presentation could be very successful because the people wants to hear from the similar background of the peoples more effectively rather than coming from the government people or from the policymakers or from the scientists. So for example, last time when I run an event, I engaged one of the farmers from the Northern Territory to give his perspective of the soil management in and the event was for the peoples for the Western New South Wales farmers. So because that panel member was there, and I have noted that there are many peoples like who are driving who could not make that event uh, on their computer screens or in person. So they dial in through from their cars through because they were really interested how the peoples in the NT are in managing their soil. So having a person from their community always makes the things very easy in terms of the making the success of the event. For then partnership with the government agencies, because the resources the government agencies, especially the research resources, are not readily available in the private sector. So having a organizations on board, research institute on the board, and a private sector who can engage with the agriculture business industry leaders uh, pri- to provide practical insight of the solution is very important for a successful event. Then how to implement the promotion strategy, how to reach out with the people. Social media is the key platform. For example, Facebook, LinkedIn. Then you can target the distribution of the posters and flyers through the newsletter of the industry bodies. You can partner with the industry association and use their newsletters to promote your event, and that's bring you a huge success. If there are 4 or 5 industries are available in your area, go for them, and then that will bring you a number for your event. And the last is the direct reach to the community. So community notice boards, the shopping centers, libraries, council notice boards are the key area where I normally target to attract the peoples for my audience. Uh, then how to measure the impact of the improvement? To pre and post event surveys that will tell you what you pre-event will tell you what you will be going to present. Post-event will tell you how successful the event is. Other thing is do visit the people's landholders, and that will you get an idea of the adoption of the new practices. And the third and the last one is get a feedback mechanism, which is very important for ongoing improvement and development. Best practices for the survey and the feedbacks. Use the Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, or Type Forms to create and distribute surveys electronically. Limit the number of the questions. Avoid long and complex surveys that may discourage the participant to participate, and craft survey questions which are very easy to understand and straightforward. The last one is analyze your response, act on the feedback, what you got. To put the things in perspective, this is my region, Western Local Land Services. Very we are the largest region in the New South Wales, bigger than Victoria and Tasmania itself, and I am the only plant biosecurity person. So basically, to put the things in perspective, we are very far to the each other. To have people in an event, 4 to 5 people seems like it's a success for the event because the people are set, situated far away from the each other, big landholders. So when I'm putting an example from one of my events which I did recently. So one I did in Durton and one I did in Broken Hill. So I got 56 participants, which shocked everybody how I got it. Basically, these 56 participants, majority are the growers, industry representative, and the community members. And for the Broken Hill event, I got 45 participants, majority of them the backyard gardeners, landholders, and the community members over there. More than 60% rated the both events as an excellent. The question answer session was the one where we were very open and the peoples were uh, happy to attend those ones. Then we had a hand-on training part for that section as well. So these are the areas when you follow the recipe for the success, you have to go through the industry. So basically, to attract those peoples for the Durton session, what I did is I collaborated with the industry. So once I collaborated with the industry, like the citrus industry, grapes industry, dry grapes industry, I got a lot of interest from all these industries, and I ended up having these participants over there. Similarly, for the Broken Hill, there is no much industry available. So the problem is, if there's no industry, I could not go to the industry. So I changed my strategy. Instead of going to the industry, I went to the council, and that's how you attract the audience from the council, the backyard peoples and the peoples who wants to learn. Uh, Basically, these both events were for the fruit fly control. So just to make the things in a perspective, that what were the activities in the event. So I started with there was a AGM for the Sundacia citrus goes. So I joined my hands to have the number on board. So because they are having a AGM, so they started with the AGM, and then we kick in with our event, and then we have an introduction of our services, what local land services does. Then we have a main facilitator who primarily cover all the control activities, starting from chemical to cultural and activities, and how the peoples can do, starting from the industry point of view to the backyarders. Then we had a discussion and question answer session. Then I included the state government perspective to have the current surveillance program. The chief plant health officer came from Orange to deliver about the monitoring program what we have in the New South Wales. Then to include the Agriculture Victoria and the Melbourne University, we have a biocontrol peoples who came and deliver on the parasitoid wasps control for the fruit fly. Then to make the things more interesting, I have a farmers on board who actually bring the rapid aim technology. What his success story is, how he is utilizing the rapid aims on the farm, which makes the things more interesting because farmers wants to hear from the farmers. And then there was a sterilized insect technology update on that one, and then the normal thing. So that was basically the program where you have everything: industry, institutes, organizations, government, farmers, technology. So what are my key learning from this both of the events? So basically, I didn't. My key learning was not all the attendees came with a smartphone, so they don't have the ability to do check-ins online sort of stuff. So you need to figure it out, the age demographics to be considered when you're planning a digital events. When I did the barcode thing in the Broken Hill, majority of people did not have the smartphone. So you have to go with the paper sign-in thing. The other thing in logistic and preparation was getting an extra handouts for the attendees. You might not get all the RSVPs, and when you are on site, people want the handouts, brochures, flyers for everybody. And that's the only thing which I learned is you need to have more than double of the handouts with you, so that you can have luxury that if extra people turns up, you can provide them. Yes, one more thing, important thing which I missed over here is the number. In addition to the numbers, when you have the numbers, then you have the liberty to get sponsored. All both events, the breakfast was sponsored by the agriculture provider company. Soft drinks and morning tea was sponsored by the ag tech company, and the lunch was provided by another agriculture supply. But to get attracted the ag companies, you have to provide the numbers. So if you have a numbers, they will come and sponsor your event. And to get a numbers, you have to collaborate with different organizations.
Thank you, Salman.
Thank you.
That's fantastic, and sincere thanks also to Dennis, Jarna, Manny, Troy, and Andrew for their presentations today. Look, for some of those that joined us partway through, you might have gathered we had a little glitch with the webinar link. So our apologies, our sincere apologies for that. Just a reminder to those that did join us later, all of the presentations can be watched on Catch Up on YouTube, and the questions can be asked through, additional questions can be asked through the webinar channel on Slack. And if you want to access this, please message Saj or Trish either in the chat or using the email that's been put into the chat now. So thank you for that. Please also keep an eye on the new website. So all of the resources from today will be made available, and they'll also be linked to each of the regions that have presented. So it's really intuitive to look at those. We have probably just a couple of minutes really for questions for those who are able to stay on a little longer. We might be able to extend this out a little way. We've got a few bits of housekeeping to do at the end as well. But I might just ask if there is any, I can't see the chat at the moment, but if there are any questions that have been added to the chat. Tricia.
Not at this stage.
I can't see any in there. So thanks, Trish. I might just, while we are waiting for that, I know that Jarna's had to jump off. Manny, really interested in the work that you've done, and I was wondering if you're still online. Are there any other threats that you've been working on in terms of threats to marine turtles that you've been working on, and how have you gone about that?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yes, we have. So I've mentioned the impact of climate change and the impact of nets and rubbish on the beaches. So what we're doing, one thing is looking at the temperature within the nest chamber, because if the rising temperatures through the climate change keep increasing, more and more female turtles are getting born, and no more males are actually born, because the incubation temperature defines the sex of the turtle. So what we're doing is like putting temperature data loggers into our nest when the female is laying, and we put on the cages, as I explained, we put some shade cloths on, so it keeps the nest shaded and the temperature cooler, and then put a temperature logger next to the nest and have a control site to see what the impact is. And we've shown that the temperature is going significantly down in the nest. The rangers are also conducting lots of beach cleanups every year. So last year I had the fortune to join them, and it's a significant impact on the environment. So they're collecting like a ton of rubbish per kilometer roughly. So like over 7 days we did 7 Ks and 7 tons of rubbish. So it's amazing. They're also working together with the biosecurity people from Topwatch to collect ghost nets and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots going on in the background, lots of little projects that improve the environment of marine turtles.
That's great. Thanks. And again, well done. Look, I know we have got a few people dropping off, so I just wanted to wrap up a few admin things before we lose too many more. Just a few little pieces of admin. The next topic for the webinar will be on high pathogenicity avian influenza or bird flu. So please keep your eye out for details on that. But there are 5 other ideas that we've had in terms of community of practice topics which you can vote on. And in the link there is, in the chat there is a link to a form where you can vote on those. And we'll basically organise a webinar on the topic that gets the greatest votes. So you can basically click on that link, put as many stars in, or as few as you want, on as many topics or as few topics as you'd like. So that's in the chat now. We'll also put that on the Slack channel. So really encourage you to be going to the Slack channel and following those links in there. And we're really in your hands to follow up on that. Next, the NRM Knowledge Conference, the National NRM Regions Australia Knowledge Conference, is on in September this year in Cairns. We are looking for working group members to provide some thought leadership on topics and activities associated with the National Knowledge Conference. It's not an organiser role. We really just want you for your ideas. And so if you're interested in that, can you please reach out through the email provided in the chat or in the through the Slack channel as well. We also want to be able to provide some training because you've told us that training and capability and capacity building is an important limitation that needs dealing with. So we would like to provide some training associated with the NRM Knowledge Conference for those that are attended. So if you have any preference for training needs, there is a thread in the Slack channel where you can respond to that, or again, you can email us. So whichever way works best for you, please let us know. And finally, we are doing some planning for the next iteration of this project that provides you with biosecurity support to the NRM regions. So the current project ends at the end of November this year, and we have a 1.5-hour facilitated workshop on the 13th of March from 2 to 3:30 Australian Eastern Daylight Time to run through some areas of development that have been identified by you as members and by NRM Regions Australia about what we want to do in the next iteration of this project. So if you're interested in being involved in that, please email myself or Saj. Finally, for those that have been able to stay on to the end, there is a link to the Menti survey, which provides you with an opportunity to provide some of that feedback that I've just mentioned. As we have said before, and as you should know, the survey is really quick, and we've been actively using it to refine how we are tailoring our services to you as NRM Regions Australia members and your involvement in the Biosecurity Hub. So please, you can follow the link, or you can use your smartphone to scan that QR code that's on screen, and that will give you a really simple opportunity to both vote on things that you like and put in word responses for things that you would like us to focus on in a different way, or additionally for future webinars. Thank you, Trish and Sage, for all those things that you've been popping in the chat. That's great. There's very much is a team effort to get through all of these webinars. Look, thank you again sincerely for everyone that's presented today. Thank you, Sage and Trish, for your support. Apologies again for the tech issues. But I encourage you to look through the YouTube channel. Encourage you to promote that to other people within the sector as well, because today's webinar is all about sharing information with other people. So with that, Trish or Sage, unless I've missed anything as a final check.
No, I just might invite everyone to also contact us if you have peers who would like to hear about any of the webinars or communities of practice that NRM Regions Australia are hosting. We're keen to be able to share those invitations to our event, so please let us know.
Right, excellent. Thank you, Trish, and thanks everyone for your attendance today, and have a lovely afternoon.